Green Angel by Alice Hoffman, pages 26 to 31. When I went out in the morning, there was nothing left but ashes and stones. We had been at the height of our harvest, row after row of new zucchini and purple onions, of peppers that were shiny as frogs, and blueberry bushes that were thickening with fruit. The garden was gone. Those days were over. Standing there, I knew my family wasn't coming back. I could feel it, the way you feel the wind across your face. Invisible but certain, sure as the blood in your veins. I carried the stones, which had chased the looters from our garden, in all of my pockets. I took them far into the woods, out to where the oldest trees grew. Was it an accident that these stones had fallen, or was it something more? Should I be grateful to someone who had been watching over me? I didn't know what to believe. I didn't know if I believed in anything at all. Carefully, I made 3 piles, one for my mother, one for my father, one for my little sister. Every day I carted stones, and every day I added to the growing stacks. Black for my mother, silver for my father, pure white for my sister, the hardest to find. The white stones tossed into our garden were best of all. They were like moonstones, aglow with light. Wherever I went, I carried stones in my pockets, my hands, my boots. It was my duty, my burden, my gift, my soul, the reason I woke in the morning and went to sleep at night. Now I had a purpose, to build the stone stacks. I had known the woods before, now I knew them nearly blind and in the dark. I could find my way by touch. My fingers could tell the difference between east and west. I could rub a clod of dirt under my thumb and gauge how close to the river I was. Before long, I could hold a fallen feather in the palm of my hand and tell whether it belonged to a jay or a sparrow or a dove. When the stacks of stones were tall as the tallest men in the village, I went on to my next task. I began to clean the house. I was determined to get rid of all the ashes. I swept the floor until the straw bristles of the broom were ragged from use. I cleaned until my fingers hurt, and when it was done, when the brass doorknobs were shining and the kettles were scrubbed and the windows were bright with light, I turned on myself. I chopped off all my burnt hair with the scissors my mother had used to trim the roses beside the front door. My hair was nothing more than a black curtain. I didn't need it anymore. My hair reminded me of my mother. It was the only way I was like her, the one feature we shared. I didn't want to be prideful anymore. I wanted to be as hard and brittle as the stones I carted into the woods, stones that could not feel or cry or see. That is what I wished for as I walked past the brambles, as I built the stacks in the woods higher and higher. I wished not to feel anything at all. I had no idea that even in the darkest world there are some wishes that can come true. Now I understood that those are the ones to think over most carefully. Those are the wishes that can wound just as surely as the sharpest arrow. In no time, what I wished for, I became. Soon enough, I began wearing my father's old black boots and a battered leather jacket that felt like armor. I kept several smooth rocks in my pockets, along with a slingshot fashioned out of wood and a belt. I planned to be ready in case the looters came back. I smoked cigarettes I discovered in a drawer. I drank from the bottle of gin kept in the cupboard until my stomach burned. One night, when the sky was ash-colored, I went into the ruined garden and clipped the thorns from the bare rose bushes, then sewed them to my clothes, one by one, until my fingers bled. Now I was ready to feel nothing. I was protected from feeling anything at all. All the same, there was less and less food in the pantry, and my stomach growled all the time. I hated it for wanting food. I didn't deserve anything, not food to ease my hunger or water to ease my thirst. I should have been on that street weighing vegetables when it happened. Instead, I've been weeding and thinking about my lunch. I was standing under the perfect blue sky, feeling sorry for myself. That was when I took a pen and some black ink. I began to mark my arm. I outlined a raven and then a bat, then a rose that looked like a flower found at the end of the world. That's who I was without my mother and my father and my moonlit sister. Blood and ink. Darkness where before there had been patience. Black where there'd once been green. The decision of who would stay and who would go to the city was made arbitrarily that day. A single white page of fate that altered our future. I could have insisted. I could have run after them. Then I would have been there to turn to my mother at the instant when it happened. The last thing I saw would have been her black hair and the fire behind her, red as roses. But I was the one who was still alive. The girl whose eyes burned, whose vision was blurry, whose stomach growled, who wrote upon herself with black ink as if that could change anything. Once I wanted only one thing, to be 16. One simple, easy desire. That day wasn't so far away, but it might as well have been forever. I was no more certain that my wish would be granted than I was that daylight would remain, that the birds would sing, that my garden would grow.